Good day, everybody. My name is Fitzraven, and I was actually going to save this teaching for next week's video. But next week is going to be the week preparing for Pesach, for Passover. And everyone is so busy and it's so hectic. And I really wanted to create an opportunity for this teaching to sink as deeply in as possible in advance of Pesach, in advance of the holiday, in advance of the Seder. So I'm backing it up and bringing you this beautiful, beautiful story of the Baal Shem Tov early, so that there's time to digest it, to be with it, to internalize it, to reflect on it, and really embody it. And to create a little bit of context, for anyone who's familiar with the Hasidic way of life, anyone who was raised in the Hasidic household, knows that the night of the Pesach Seder is chock filled with mitzvahs, the Eraises, biblical commandments, the Rabbanons, rabbinic commandments. There's the eating of the matzah, the mortar, the 4 cups of wine, the leaning, all of the customs. There's so much going on and so much law to uphold. And Hasidim especially are super particular about upholding all of these mitzvahs on the highest possible caliber. And sometimes this becomes rather stressful. Things are hectic, the wife is spread thin, the children are exhausted, the man of the house is a little bit stressed and stretched, and it can become quite anxiety-inducing to make sure that one is upholding all of this commandments and all of the laws and all of the customs and all of the rituals and all of it down to the finest details in the most beautiful and the best of ways. And sometimes the price of that anxiety and that stress is an environment around the table, an environment in the home that's less than wholesome, that's not loving, that's not friendly, that's not embracing, that's lacking fluidity and love, flexibility and openness. So the question is, just how much of a value is the mood and the atmosphere and the environment at the Seder? Does it really matter? If a person is observing all of the mitzvahs and he's being scrupulous about doing them in the most beautiful and most perfect way possible, does it really matter so much that the wife is a little bit angry, or that the children feel a little bit scared or anxious or unwelcome or rejected? How much does this really matter? I think that a lot of people think this is like a pop psychology value. This is a value of modern world, of like a liberated, emancipated society. Everything is about how people feel. It's about being in a good mood. It's about a loving environment. And I think a lot of people think that this is not really a Jewish value. It's not really a Hasidic value. It's certainly not a high item on the list of priorities of what to look out for on the night of the Seder. This is how it seems a lot of people think. And there's this beautiful story of the Baal Shem Tov, taught by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, that, in my view, really, really speaks to this. And here's the story. B'Pesach, B'Leil HaSeder, on Passover Eve, on the night of the Seder, as Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov sat with his disciples to conduct the Seder, he was in great joy. And he was elaborating and speaking to his disciples and to the guests about the great pleasure that is released through the practice and the service of simple people. over, in contrast to, the service of sophisticated people, of people who are able to delve deeply into Torah study and worship and prayer. So the Baal Shem Tov is expounding on the great pleasure that is released into consciousness, on the great pleasure that God derives from the simple person who has a simple and sincere, straightforward, visceral service of God, over the one who has a cerebral service of God, over the one that has a sophisticated service of God, over the one that's scholarly. And the Baal Shem Tov goes ahead and instructs his students, they should all close their eyes, and that they should all place their hands on the shoulders of the one sitting next to them. And in this way, all of the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov sitting around the table, their eyes are closed, they form a circle through each one of them placing their hands on the shoulder of this one sitting next to them. The Baal Shem Tov goes ahead and completes the circle. The Baal Shem Tov places his two hands, his right hand on the shoulder of the disciple sitting on his right, the left hand on the shoulder of the disciple sitting to his left, and he begins to chant a melody. Now, as this circle is complete, and all of the eyes of the disciples and the guests sitting around the table are all closed, and the Baal Shem Tov chants a melody, they all begin to experience a vision. Hatalmidim wrote, the students saw, Echer Bavrom Bel Shtenitzer, Yoshev and Ishto V'Yiladav Esle B'Kfar L'Yad Shulchan HaSeder B'Cheder Katan. There was one student of the Baal Shem Tov, his name was Rabbi Avram Bel Shtenitzer, and he was really a simple guy. A straight shooter, not someone who comprehended deep concepts or ideas, didn't have a great intellectual prowess, none of that. He was a simple, straightforward person, sincere, heartfelt, well-meaning, and all of the students and all of the disciples had this vision of Rebbe Avram sitting with his wife and their children near the Seder table in a small room. On the table is a few pottery dishes, and a little bit of oil is burning. Rabbi Avram and Rabbi Avram, the man of the house, and his household, Yoshvim are sitting chagigim, celebratory, b'simcha rabba, with great joy, v'orchem es ha-seder, and they're conducting the Seder. The vibe is wonderful. The vision continues. Himro'u gam asher nosen leventhendler. This is another student, another disciple of the Baal Shem Tov. His name was Rav Nosson Leventhendler. And he was very scholarly, very cerebral, very sophisticated, very deep. The disciples see how he's conducting the Seder. Yoshev sitting with his household, the Bayis Bebrod, in their home in Brod, the Cheder Gadol Mur, in a large room, very well lit, Liyad Shulchan Aruch B'chol Tuv, at a table that's laden with all kinds of goodness. Aval Kulam Minufachin, they're all short-tempered, V'koyasim, and angry, V'lo Yisvei Rotzen, stressed and dissatisfied them is that one from the other. So you have the students of the Baal Shem Tov are experiencing this vision of Rabbi Avram sitting with his wife, his household in a small room, simple table, a few pottery dishes, a little bit of oil burning, and they're all elated, and they're all in a great mood, and they're all in a celebratory state of mind, conducting the Seder. And then you have this Rav Nosson sitting in a large room, well lit, a table laden with all kinds of goodness, and everyone is anxious, stressed, and angry at one or the other. This was the vision. When the Baal Shem Tov then removed his hands from upon the shoulders of the two disciples on his either side, and he stopped to sing, he told the disciples to open their eyes. He said, this is the difference between someone who works on his self, even though he's simple. When he works on the self, he sees in every issue, in every situation, he sees the goodness and the beauty of the other person. And therefore, all the time he's happy, and he's always in an elated state of being. Even though there isn't enough food for the children, he's in joy. This is the story of the Baal Shem Tov. When I read this story, it struck me so powerful. Look at the scenario that the Baal Shem Tov uses to depict to his disciples the virtue of a simple, straightforward person who confronts themselves and works with their character. What scenario does the Baal Shem Tov use to demonstrate this? The mood, the atmosphere, the vibe at the Seder table. The Baal Shem Tov does not draw the attention of his disciples to the level of observance at the Seder table, to the level of scrupulousness, to who is upholding more of the law or less of the law, more perfectly or less perfectly. No. The Baal Shem Tov highlights the mood, the environment. Is there camaraderie? Is there joviality? Is there a celebratory mood? Is there love? Is there peace? Is there presence? Or is there obnoxiousness, anxiety, stress, anger, and short-temperedness? My friends, the Baal Shem Tov used the mood, the environment, the quality of the atmosphere at the Seder table to demonstrate to his disciples the virtue and the beauty of a simple person who works on himself and works on his character. To me, this teaches me that the quality of the environment and the mood at the Seder table is high up in the hierarchy and in the food chain of a chassid and of someone who wants to truly serve his maker, and someone who wants to observe the Torah and the mitzvahs and the Seder night in the most wholesome way. I invite you to take this in, give it some thought, and think about this before Pesach. Maybe it requires some planning. Maybe it requires consulting with your rabbi. Maybe it requires a conversation with your wife. Maybe it requires you changing your schedule in advance of Pesach. Prepare. Prepare for this. Think about this so that you can come into the Seder night and be in a state of joy and love and celebration, so that the environment can be one that is inclusive, that is wholesome, because that is so joyful and pleasurable to God, and that is such a pristine service. I love you all. Thank you for receiving this. I wish you a beautiful Pesach and a beautiful preparation from love.